The Galactic Council had existed for 14,000 cycles, a testament to the endurance of the elder races. The Vrakesh dominated with their psychic prowess, the Luminari with their technological mastery, and the Sarith, the Dragonkin, with their ancient wisdom and unmatched physical power. Humans were the newcomers, the upstarts, barely 3 centuries into their membership, and still considered little more than clever primates by most. Jackson Webb didn't care much about any of that. He sat cross-legged on the observation deck of the trading station Zenith 7, his toolbox spread around him like a mechanical garden. In his oil-stained hands, he held a small hovering toy, a miniature star skipper that had seen better days. Its antigrav cell was fried, one wing was bent at an impossible angle, and the hull showed scorch marks from what looked like enthusiastic play. "Can you fix it?" a small voice asked. Jackson looked up. The speaker was barely 3 feet tall, covered in iridescent scales that shifted from emerald to sapphire in the station's artificial light. Orla, the youngest daughter of High Chancellor Thraxul of the Sarith Imperium, stared at him with eyes that seemed far too old for her small frame. "Probably," Jackson said, turning the toy over in his hands. "What happened to it?" "I flew it into a wall," Orla admitted, her tail drooping with shame. "Mother says I'm too reckless. Father says I dishonor the toys given to me." Jackson smiled. "Your parents sound strict." "They are the rulers of 700 worlds," Orla said matter-of-factly. "They must be strict." "Yeah, well, I'm just a mechanic," Jackson replied, pulling out a soldering iron. "And mechanics believe every broken thing deserves a second chance." He worked in comfortable silence while Orla watched, her serpentine neck craning to observe every movement. Her species could live for millennia, their hatchlings developing slower than human children. Though she appeared young, Jackson knew she might already be 50 or 60 years old. "Why do humans always fix things?" Orla asked suddenly. "The Luminari would simply fabricate a new one, the Vrakesh would use their minds to reshape it, but humans, you always repair." Jackson paused, considering the question. "Because fixing something is different from replacing it. This toy has your memories in it. The scratches, the scorch marks, they're part of your story. A new one would just be new." Orla's eyes widened slightly. "You believe objects hold memory?" "I believe they hold meaning," Jackson corrected, reconnecting a circuit. "And that's more important than perfection." The toy hummed to life, its antigrav cell purring smoothly. Jackson had even managed to buff out most of the scorch marks, though he'd left a few. Character, he called it. Orla's tail swept back and forth in what Jackson had learned was the Sarith equivalent of a smile. She took the toy gently in her clawed hands. "Thank you, Jackson Webb. I will remember this kindness." "Just bring it back if it breaks again," he said with a grin. That was 15 years ago. Jackson stood in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Sarith Imperium, surrounded by representatives from 1,000 worlds. He felt profoundly out of place in his simple gray suit, a stark contrast to the elaborate robes and bioluminescent armor around him. The humans had made their proposal, a joint defense initiative against the Null Swarm, the extragalactic threat that had already consumed 40 systems on the rim. Humanity offered their adaptability, their unconventional tactics, their stubborn refusal to surrender. They asked for ships, resources, and, most importantly, trust. The Vrakesh ambassador's psychic voice echoed in every mind. Humanity is too young, too unpredictable. They fight without honor, using guerrilla tactics and deception. We cannot trust them with our fleets. The Luminari Conclave agreed. Their technology is derivative, cobbled together from other species' innovations. They have no original contributions to offer. One by one, the elder races spoke against the proposal. Jackson watched his delegation's hopes crumble. Admiral Chen's jaw was tight with frustration. Ambassador Rodriguez looked ready to launch into another passionate defense. Then the doors at the far end of the hall opened. Orla entered, and the chamber fell silent. She was no longer the small hatchling Jackson had met on Zenith 7. She stood 20 feet tall now, her scales gleaming like polished jade and sapphire, her wings folded majestically against her back. But it was her eyes, those same ancient, knowing eyes, that found Jackson across the crowded hall. The Sarith Imperium recognizes the human delegation. Her voice resonated like distant thunder. Jackson's heart skipped. Orla had ascended to the throne 5 years ago after her father's death. She was now Empress of 700 worlds, commander of the most feared military force in known space. This council speaks of humanity's lack of honor, Orla continued, her gaze sweeping across the assembled representatives, of their derivative nature, of their untrustworthiness. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was quieter but somehow more powerful. I would tell you a story. The chamber waited. 15 years ago, I was a careless hatchling who broke a cherished toy. I approached many beings that day, seeking help. The Luminari merchants offered to sell me a new one. The Vrakesh counselors told me to accept my loss as a lesson. Others ignored me entirely. She turned, her eyes locked on Jackson. But one human, a simple mechanic, sat with me on a dirty observation deck and spent 3 hours repairing something that had no value to anyone but me. He didn't ask for payment. He didn't lecture me about responsibility. He simply saw something broken and made it whole again, because he believed that was the right thing to do. Jackson felt every eye in the hall turn toward him. He wanted to disappear into the floor. That human taught me something my tutors could not, Orla said. He taught me that value is not determined by power or perfection, but by the meaning we assign to things. That the willingness to repair is more important than the ability to replace. That kindness to the small and seemingly insignificant is the truest measure of character. She spread her wings, the gesture commanding absolute attention. Humanity fights without the rigid honor codes of the Vrakesh, because they understand that survival requires adaptation. They build derivative technology because they are wise enough to learn from others rather than arrogantly insisting on isolation. They offer trust to species who have not earned it because they believe in the possibility of better futures. The Empress of the Sarith Imperium lowered her massive head, her eyes never leaving Jackson's face. The Sarith Imperium pledges its full support to the human proposal. We will commit 300 warships, the full resources of our military-industrial complex, and the loyalty of our vassal states to this cause. Not because we fear the null swarm, but because 15 years ago, a human showed kindness to a careless hatchling, and we have not forgotten. The hall erupted in shocked murmurs. The Vrakesh ambassador's psychic presence radiated disbelief. The Luminari conclave seemed to flicker with confusion. But Orla wasn't finished. Furthermore, I invoked the ancient compact of mutual defense. The Sarith Imperium has chosen its allies. Those who stand against humanity stand against us. Those who support them earn our friendship. Choose wisely. It was a masterstroke of political maneuvering. Within hours, a dozen species pledged their support. The Luminari, pragmatic as always, quickly reversed their position. Even the Vrakesh, after a tense deliberation, agreed to commit resources. The null swarm would face a united front. After the session, Orla requested a private audience with the human delegation. Jackson found himself once again face-to-face with the hatchling he'd helped so long ago, though now he had to crane his neck to meet her eyes. "You remembered," he said simply. "Sarith never forget debts of honor," Orla replied. "But this was more than honor, Jackson Webb. You taught me to see value where others saw none, to repair rather than discard. Those lessons guided my rule, my policies, my understanding of what it means to lead." She lowered her head until her massive eye was level with his face. The man who mended a hatchling's toys would one day bow to the Dragon Emperor, she said softly. But I think the prophecy had it backwards. It is the Dragon Emperor who should bow to him. Please don't, Jackson said quickly, horrified at the thought. You're an empress, I'm just a mechanic who believes broken things deserve second chances, Orla finished. The galaxy needs more beings like you, Jackson Webb, especially now. As Jackson left the Imperial Palace that evening, he thought about the small toy he'd repaired on a dirty observation deck. He wondered if Orla still had it, or if it had finally broken beyond repair. He hoped she still had it. Some things were worth keeping, even broken. Above him, the Sarith fleet was already mobilizing. 300 warships, each one emblazoned with the Imperial crest, all committed to defending humanity's vision of a united galaxy. All because 15 years ago, a mechanic had taken the time to fix a toy. The Null Swarm would learn what the elder races were beginning to understand. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their weapons or their tactics. It was their stubborn, unreasonable belief that broken things, broken people, broken alliances, broken hopes, could always be mended. And sometimes that belief could move empires.